Hello all, I'm Sai and you're watching The Book Dragon. In today's video, I'm bringing to you my review of A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which is the first story in the Sherlock Holmes series. Now, my brother gave me this idea to make a series in which I talk about and review all the Sherlock Holmes stories, which was given to me in December, and finally I'm executing it now in March. The main thing why I was putting this series off for such a while is that it's an old series, so the language is going to be a bit tough. If you've been following me, you obviously know that I'm not that comfortable with older styles of writing because they don't flow that easily for me. But I should say that this was comparatively easier for me to read, and I'll be reviewing each and every one of the stories when I go on in the future. As of now, I'm going to review this one alone in a spoiler-free manner so that anyone who's thinking of picking up the series can also start reading it. And I should say that it is a really solid start to a series, and yeah, let's get into the review right away. Starting with the plot, we have Dr. John Watson, who used to be an army doctor in the time of the Second Afghan War in Afghanistan. What happens during the war is that he gets hurt and he's having some illness, so he is using a walking stick right now. And what happens due to all these reasons is that he cannot continue his work and he comes back to Europe and he stays in London. While he's in London, he's not being able to afford to the place in which he's living, so he meets one of his old friends named Stanford in one of the bars that he goes to, and Stanford says that he has this particular dwelling in which he can live, but he has to share this place with the other person named Sherlock Holmes. And he also says that Sherlock Holmes is not a normal person, he's a really peculiar type of person who's also a bit eccentric at times. So as of now, at this point, Watson just wants to share a room with the person so that he can bring down the expenses. He meets Sherlock and they hit it off. They find each other comfortable to live along with, so they both start living together. And when they live together, Watson starts observing some of the activities of Sherlock, and he sees that he's not a normal person like every other person is. And later on, he discovers that Sherlock is a private detective, and he starts exploring some of the things that Sherlock does. What happens on a particular day is that Sherlock is bored of all the cases that he has got, and it's not that much interesting for him to work on. On this particular day, there is this another private detective called Mr. Gregson who comes and asks for Sherlock's assistance on a case. So Sherlock just accepts it because the case seems so interesting for him, and they go to a house in London itself. Watson is taken by Sherlock along with him, and in that house they find the dead body of a person, and the story just kicks off from then. Who is the murderer of that person, or was that death a murder or a suicide? All these things are explored further on in the story, and it is told in such a detailed yet not jarring or boring way. Moving on to the characters, there are only two main characters whom we focus on throughout the story, and they are Sherlock Holmes and John Watson himself. And we get the story told from the point of view of John Watson. So it's not from a first person's point of view what Sherlock is doing, but it's from another person's first point of view, which is that of Watson. So we get all the things that Sherlock does from and through the eyes of Watson himself, and they are all so detailed and peculiarly explained in a really good way, if you ask me. So if you're a person who likes giving attention to detail, I'm sure that you will like these characters a lot. Apart from Watson, the most information that we get a single character is Sherlock himself, and he is a really interesting character from the first story itself. The first story is not even 130 pages long, it's just 123 or 125 pages long, and I should say that he was the most well-written character of all. The author just makes it so clear that Sherlock is going to be the main character no matter what happens throughout this series. In that first story itself, I was able to sense that very well, and all the abilities that Sherlock has and how he has developed those skills within him that is needed for his job, they all have been laid out perfectly by the author, if you ask me. Also, apart from these two main characters, we also have many other side characters who play very much pivotal roles within this particular story. I'm not sure if they'll occur in the further stories in the books or not, in the stories or not, but I'm sure that there are certain links which I can see that can lead up to further stories in the future. If I'm not wrong, let's just wait and see if it's going to happen or not. I'm not naming any of the characters because if I name them, they might give out spoilers for you. So yeah, these are the two main characters, and I should say that of those two characters, Sherlock is written in such a way that he is made so clear, crystal clear, that he is the main character. Moving on to the writing, one thing which I was so intimidated while getting into the series is that the writing might be tough for me to comprehend because I don't flow that well with traditional old types of writings. Though they are so rich and so complex in many ways, they don't gel that well with me because I'm used to reading more of modern literature rather than that like classics and old literature. But I should say that the writing in this one is old, but I'm sure that it is very easily readable and digestible in multiple ways. Also, I'd not suggest you to start with Sherlock Holmes if you're a beginner. I'd say that if you have read like 4 or 5 books before this one, which are like in a normal level, then you can move to this one, because it's definitely not for beginners. But I can say that it doesn't require that much experience for having read complex stories. Also, the language used is a bit old, but it is easy to comprehend and read and understand in a very basic level. And also, apart from all these things, one thing which I was very interested while getting into the series is that it's just a murder mystery series throughout. So there must be a lot of details which are given to us, and there must be nuggets that are just sprinkled on in the beginning, which need to be discovered and told to us by the author or shown to us by the author in the preceding chapters. So I was so interested in that, and I should say that it did not disappoint in that aspect in Envy at all, because I was able to see some of the things that the author was laying out in the beginning and how all those things are going to crystallize towards the end of the story. So the writing in that aspect was really good. One thing which also bothered me a bit before getting into the story was that since it is a murder mystery, as I said before, there might be a lot of details and description which might bore me as a reader. I like reading descriptive text, but only when it comes to fantasy, not to modern day or realistic literature or literary fictions like this one. But I should say that I did like the amount of description and detail that was put into this one, because it is detailed in a proper way, but it's not way too descriptive like most of the old stuff that I've read. And it was such a fun experience reading it the whole time, because the author just gave us the exact amount of information that is needed for us to understand the story. Next, moving on to the pacing. I was sure that this was going to be a fast-paced story, because I have watched the first season alone of the Sherlock Holmes show, and my brother has watched like all the seasons that are out yet. And that's one of the main reasons why I picked it up, because it is so detailed and so fast-paced, which I do like, because I do like reading quick-paced books at times, and this one does not disappoint me in any way when it comes to that particular aspect. And I should say that though the pacing was so fast, there is this particular portion in the story where the story is split into two as part 1 and part 2. The part 1 is a different section, and the part 2 starts off with something so different from what we've read in the first half, and that did spoil the pace a little bit for me, because I was not really able to understand. I was able to understand that there was going to be some connection between this story and the things which we read before, because it'll just be a huge mess and blunder if it is not done in such a way. It does have a lot of connections, but the amount of time it takes to understand those connections and establish those connections, it's a bit too long if you ask me, and that's the thing which just bumped down the pace a little bit for me. And I should say that except that everything was really well written and detailed, and the pacing was decent in every aspect. Finally, my overall ratings for this story, which is A Study in Scarlet, is 4 stars, and it was really good in multiple levels for me, and it did not disappoint at all. I'm very much interested in reading the further stories in the series, and I'm also expecting to see a lot more of friendship dynamics that is going to work between John Watson and Sherlock Holmes, because I have watched it in the show and I did like it in the show, and I'm expecting to see it in its original sense from the source material. Also, there is one particular story in this particular edition of the book called The Hound of Baskervilles, which is the one which intrigues me the most just from the title itself, and I'm very much excited to read it. So if any of you guys have already read some of the Sherlock Holmes stories, I know that some of you guys have, because you have recommended me to read it in the channel already before, and I'm finally doing it now. And I should say that this one was a very strong and solid start, and I can see myself reading the further stories sooner than later in the future. So let's just wait and see when I'm going to read them, and I'll definitely review each and every one of the stories as I go on reading them in the channel, and there'll be a Sherlock Holmes playlist very soon. And anyone who's a fan of the series can go and check out all my videos, and we can discuss further on in the comments or in my Instagram DMs. You can now find it down in the description or in the beginning of the video where I've left it right here. And yeah, that's it for today. And if you did enjoy watching today's video and found it helpful in some way or the other, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. If you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel, because I publish new videos every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.